The northern panhandle of West Virginia is a long way from India, and the culture which for thousands of years has worshipped a supreme being revealed in many forms. The devotion to Lord Krishna as the supreme personality of God came to the West with all its intensity, austerity, and touches of opulence. Still, North Americans tend to associate it with young devotees chanting on street corners or peddling books in airports. Krishna consciousness enjoys the respect of religious scholars and even recognition by U.S. courts as a bona fide religion. Here at New Vrindavan, devotees have created an environment where they can live their beliefs. Their presence has both pleased and dismayed their West Virginia neighbors.
I see a contentment here that I don't see in society.
Our attitude is now we leave them alone, we don't hassle them, we don't give them any reason to hassle us, but you can't let them get away with anything either.
I don't think that they're hostile people, as many people immediately assume, or that they're all crackpots.
We have 65 or so centers in the United States, and everyone is trying to do the most to spread Krishna consciousness. And if New Vrindavan, by building these temples and actually establishing the Krishna conscious culture, architecture, art, theater, music, philosophy, here at New Vrindavan, if we can do that, then it will become the center.
When ISKCON, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, was founded by the late Bhaktipada Swami Prabhupada, one of the goals was, in his words, to erect for the members and for society at large a holy place of transcendental pastimes dedicated to the personality of Krishna. Now, here in the countryside around Limestone, West Virginia, the community called New Vrindavan exists. With its striking centerpiece, Prabhupada's Palace, it is a memorial to the ISKCON founder, a place of religious pilgrimage, a tourist attraction, home territory for some 300 people, and one of the biggest land holdings in Marshall County. Prabhupada's Palace of Gold reflects the sun with 8,000 square feet of gold leaf. There are 80 stained glass windows, 42 crystal chandeliers, 40 different kinds of marble, and 3 tons of finely carved Indian teakwood. At the center of the palace, beneath the 300-ton gold leaf dome, is a statue of Prabhupada, the lifelike size and appearance made more vivid by the sound of his recorded voice. Abhay Charande was born into a prosperous family in Calcutta, highly educated and devoted to the orthodox Vedic teachings of the Vaishnava Hindu religion. Guided by his own spiritual master, he translated and wrote commentaries in English on the Sanskrit holy book, the Bhagavad Gita. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada came to the United States in 1966 and established his first ashram or study center on Manhattan's Lower East Side. Among his first disciples was a doctoral candidate in history at Columbia University, Keith Ham of Peekskill, New York. Keith was given the name of Kirtanananda, and then, in recognition of his developing spiritual attributes, the additional titles of Swami Bhaktipada. He is now one of 11 gurus chosen by Prabhupada to perpetuate and guide the Hare Krishna movement. May I ask you how you feel personally when you're, let's say, walking down the road and someone bows down on the ground in front of you?
That is not meant for me. That is meant for God.
But how do you feel? I mean, is it something you'd rather people...
I certainly feel completely unworthy of anyone offering me such respect. See, after all, I am the lowest servant of God. But because I am the servant of my spiritual master, and because he has asked me to act on his behalf, I am obliged to accept that offering from the devotee, and I offer it to my spiritual master, who in turn offers it to his spiritual master, who in turn offers it to his, and it is going by disciplic succession to the Lord himself. The word Krishna means all attractive. It is not a sectarian name. It is not that Krishna is different than the God you may worship in the church or the synagogue. God is one. So we are worshippers of that same God. We want to develop love of God. And this, we understand from Vedic literature, is the real, original religion, or the Sanatana Dharma, the eternal religion.
The religion teaches denial of the physical being and a greater awareness of the immortal soul. To attain this, devotees promise never to eat meat or eggs, drink intoxicants or caffeine beverages, to smoke, gamble, or engage in illicit sex. Married couples are expected to limit their sexual activity to the planned procreation of children. And all are required to chant the Hare Krishna mantra, the invocation of the all-attractive one, the all-pleasing one, 1,728 times a day. Each day at New Vrindavan begins like this, in a small chapel in an old farmhouse at 4 o'clock in the morning.
It is said that in this age, the only practical way to cause realization is by chanting the holy name of the Lord. Whether you chant the name of Krishna or the name of Jesus or the name of Allah, that is not so important. God has hundreds and thousands and millions of names. He is the same person. And if you chant his name, because God is not different from his name, he is absolute in his character. Simply by his name, by the sound of his name, you can realize his presence.
To the Hare Krishnas, chanting the mantra is the most important thing they can do in life. But it isn't the only thing they do. In 1968, Kirtanananda Swami Bhaktipada followed up an ad in the San Francisco paper The Oracle and leased some property for ISKCON's first farm community in North America. It was only 100 acres without even frontage on a road. The property owner later said he expected it would be used solely as a non-denominational religious retreat and philosophic ashram. Apparently, nobody else expected the Hare Krishnas to stay for very long. Prabhupada himself visited here in the West Virginia hills several times, sometimes just walking in unheralded on the tiny group of devotees. The group purchased additional parcels of land along McCreary's Ridge, and in 1973 began to construct a fitting habitation for the ISKCON founder. Most housing here was rugged, roads were rough, the physical infrastructure unreliable. But the devotees' resources and principal efforts were committed to marble cutting and metal working, and learning such rare arts as stained glass and jewel work.
We didn't start building it as an architectural endeavor. The impulse was a desire to glorify our spiritual master. That's what the basis was. If the best thing we could ever offer him was just a log cabin in the woods, we would have done that. But we could see that if we would have just only settled for that, we would have been giving our best. So we tried to give the best at the time that we were able, and at that time when we started it was more or less a concrete block. But as we saw that this was within our reach, then we thought, well, what if suppose we just let our imagination go, and what would we offer him if we had no limits, no restraints? And naturally, we consider the spiritual master as the representative of God. And we understand that from Krishna's own words, Krishna is more pleased, he says, when his devotees are glorified than when he himself is glorified. So the object of our lives is to establish pure love for God. So if we want to express that love in the highest way, we want to then offer him what he asks for. We'll never come close to what he actually deserves. But that's the best we can do at this time.
Prabhupada passed away in India in 1977. He had been hoping to return and settle here in West Virginia. The palace was dedicated in 1979 and open to the public.
Is this your kitchen?
Yeah, that's the kitchen, and they prepare food every day to offer on the altar.
Now, everybody's working.
The Lordis are always busy.
Always busy.
Always busy in service to God. Krishna. Built all this about 3 years ago.
But we weren't in here, were we?
No.
I don't know anything about their beliefs, but I've heard about this building, and it compares very favorably with places I've seen in Europe.
I can see their point of view, and it conflicts with mine at times.
How do you feel about it? You've come back here now, so obviously...
I just live right outside, down a few miles from here, and I just thought I'd bring my friends out because it's such a nice place to come to on a nice day.
Does it bother you when people come look at the temple and say, this is marvelous, but I don't agree with their beliefs?
No.
These are wonderful people, but I just can't take their ideas.
No, but actually you'll see very rarely does that happen. Because our beliefs are genuine to any religion. They may not like the way we shave our head or the fact that we wear robes, but when you get down to the actual philosophy of their belief, if they actually have any, if they're actually genuine, I mean, they may be saying it, but if they're actually genuine, they see that love of God is a universal principle, and that's simply what we're teaching.
Prabhupada's Palace of Gold was built by the Hare Krishnas working without salaries. The cost of materials was about $500,000. It's already given them at least one income-earning spin-off, a stained glass factory. And the chief artist, Muralidhar Das, who created many of these murals, took up a more secular theme in this work at the Wheeling Civic Center, depicting the founding of that city 15 miles to the north.
Well, in my paintings, personally, I always try to give the viewer a chance to appreciate the beauty of God's creation, to in some way instill in him God consciousness to some degree.
Muralidhar grew up as Mark Missman in Des Moines, Iowa. He is now what the Hare Krishnas call a grihasta, a householder. New Vrindavan is not a commune. There are private homes like this, where Muralidhar, his wife Yogamaya, and their son Dhanvantari carry on a more or less typical family life.
Mother was very much against my becoming a devotee. In fact, she was making arrangements to have me be programmed several years ago. But she's definitely changed her opinion. She sees that we live a very clean, peaceful life, and that we're very happy. And although I don't think she would choose this for me, she's accepted it.
And in from Des Moines to visit their son and his family at New Vrindavan, Mr. and Mrs. Harold Missman.
Well, naturally, we had to go through a period of adjustment. We had reservations about the movement, really, but the more we see of it and see how devoted they are to their religion, you can't help but feel that it's the thing they want to do and it's right for them.
Dhanvantari will live with his mother and father until he is school age, and then he'll spend most of his week in the Gurukula, the Hare Krishna boarding school nearby.
The great Madhavendra Puri worshipped Krishna.
Madhavendra Puri is a big word. You have trouble with it?
No.
They have geography, they have history. They're learning all those things too, but they're learning beyond that too. They're learning who God is, what their relationship with Him is, which is the most important thing. So actually, they'll be able to see the everything in proper perspective.
To establish the Gurukula, New Vrindavan was obligated to get the approval of the state of West Virginia. The teachers had to be certified. The school term and curriculum had to parallel that of the public schools. Is there some way that you as superintendent of schools would have to look at how successfully socialized the kids are at a school the Hare Krishnas had founded?
Well, that's not one of our interests. We don't do that in the public schools. I think they know what they want to do with their educational program, And the most important thing is that their children are getting a basic education.
Actually, in their reading, these girls are probably ahead of the public schools. We use a series that within a year and a half they can read Prabhupada's books, which are pretty, if you've seen them, they're pretty hard. So they learn to read pretty well.
Will they ever get into Charles Dickens, let's say?
No, these books that we use, the Chaitanya readers, they're called. They're taken from the Srimad Bhagavatam and from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And actually it's said that in the Srimad Bhagavatam everything is contained. There's no need for anything else. The whole thing in Krishna consciousness is to remember Krishna all the time. And if we're reading all these other things, it's just a distraction. It's not helping us to remember Krishna.
Krishna can be understood only by the process of undivided devotional service. He explicitly explains this in this verse, so unauthorized commentators who try to understand Bhagavad Gita by the speculative process will know that they are simply wasting their time.
In this verse in the Bhagavad Gita, it indicates that God has a form.
This Gurukula for girls is in this cottage only temporarily. Prabhupada said that boys and girls should be instructed together when they are very young. There is no secondary school now at New Vrindavan, so when they reach the 9th grade, some of these youngsters may go off to ISKCON schools in India or elsewhere. There is a plan to build a larger permanent school at New Vrindavan. There are lots of plans here, all set on emulating Vrindavan, India, the holy city 250 miles south of New Delhi, which is revered as the birthplace of Krishna. At least 7 more temples are planned, the next one to be about 10 times as large as Prabhupada's palace. I suppose a lot of the people in this community, in this area, were a little startled when the Hare Krishnas first showed up. After a while, they became accustomed to you being here. Do you think if...
And they began to respect us. They didn't know what to expect, but when they see we were very hardworking, we got up much earlier than them and worked a lot longer and went to bed a lot later, and that we were very strict in our lifestyle, then they respected, and when we began to produce such wonderful things as the temple and taking care of 200 cows is no easy thing, and to become self-sufficient economically is not an easy thing. So they respect all those things because they're very down-to-earth people.
Do you think after 7 temples go up, some people might say, hey, that's a little too much?
Well, how many churches are there in Moundsville?
The Marshall County seat of Moundsville is a church-going, middle-class, middle American community. 7 twisty road miles west of New Vrindavan, it's the site of the West Virginia Penitentiary, probably the county's most famous landmark until Prabhupada's palace was built, and also of a 4,000-year-old conical burial mound, itself an impressive example of devotion and determination. For a while, the Hare Krishnas were chanting and distributing literature on the streets of Moundsville. Now their presence is more casual and more easily accepted. Though it isn't to be considered a divisive influence among the people of Moundsville, the beliefs of the Hare Krishnas do concern some members of the clergy.
I think we consider it less of a threat in West Virginia, but the very fact that it is coming here, we consider our people are pretty basic people of a strong Christian faith. We're not technically in the Bible Belt, but we think of ourselves as that. So we're not threatened so much by Hare Krishna other groups. But we are concerned about holding our Christian faith and principles that our nation was founded upon.
Basically, the Presbyterian Church believes in Jesus Christ as the only Savior, the only Lord. They, of course, appeal to Krishna as their Redeemer. They also practice idolatry in that they service idols in the sense of their care of the idols and the mantra and things like this that they do perform. And we have a prohibition against that in Exodus 25, which says, "Ye shall not serve false idols."
These murti forms, they are not invented. You see, an idol, anybody can make an idol. You can make it look like anything you want. But we have not invented these forms of Krishna. They're from the scripture. Even down to the dimension of his fingernail and the placement of every movement. He will only accept worship in that form.
You aware that the spiritual leader in New Vrindavan, Kirtanananda Swami, has himself a Baptist background? He was raised as a Baptist?
No, I wasn't aware of that. No, somewhat surprised at that, because most Baptists are fairly strong in their faith and their beliefs. It does surprise me some, yes.
Actually, I accept the same things I did when I was a Baptist. I mean, what is the basic teaching of Christianity? To love God. That is Krishna consciousness.
And yet,
practically, as a Baptist, I was taught not to go to the movies, not to smoke, not to do all these things, but they couldn't tell me why not. They couldn't give me a good reason. Why not? They would say something like worldly, but I couldn't understand what they were talking about. But Prabhupada brought the same message of Godhead, that God is the Supreme, that we are His servant, and that the godly life means to give up this material way of thinking that I am the enjoyer, and to surrender to the Lord because He is the supreme enjoyer.
I think that far too often we haven't paused as a community to listen to what they're saying, that we may make a compassionate and concerned response. Our God is, we believe, also their God. Our God loves them even as our God loves us. And far too often our response has been divisive and reactionary instead of loving and merciful.
For some of the people in Marshall County, the Hare Krishnas may stimulate concern due to religious beliefs. For others, they sometimes pose a challenge to day-to-day human relations. Here around Limestone, tensions have arisen that could result from having any large institution move in next door. There were sanitation problems, and in 1976, an outbreak of hepatitis spread by a devotee who had just returned from Bangladesh with the disease. It resulted in one fatality and a brief quarantine of New Vrindavan. The health record here is now good, and after several delays caused by problems over its siting, a wastewater treatment facility is in and operating. During its first years, there were several shooting attacks on New Vrindavan, and in 1973, a break-in at the chapel and desecration of the altar. The Hare Krishnas readied a defense, and for a while there were reports of an arsenal at New Vrindavan. Acts of violence against the community have subsided. But during those difficult times, when rumors grew rapidly, the devotees had few emissaries to the neighboring community. Dolores Hyde is one Limestone resident who made a special effort to get to know the Hare Krishnas.
Most of the people that live in the community, unless they live along the main road, have similar problems. You know, they have poor water systems and septic systems and so forth. And so, I mean, this is not an unusual thing in the area. But you didn't have that number of people as you have at New Vrindavan. I think people have been conditioned to be suspicious because they've lived in a society where people lie and cheat and steal. And so they expect, that's what they expect, in particular if someone comes into the community that looks different and talks different and has a different way of belief.
Have they made any attempt to convert you to say you should be?
No, I have never one time had anyone ever suggest to me that I become a devotee, and I have two daughters. One's 26 and one's 20, and they have never one time ever suggested to either one of them to come down here.
What if they suggested? What would your reaction be?
Well, I'm afraid I don't think that I could really become a member because I think I'm too conditioned to society.
After a decade in the hills of West Virginia, the Hare Krishnas began to feel they were having an impact on the economy and the cultural life of Marshall County. In 1981, they began hiring non-members from the Northern Panhandle as guides in the palace or to work in the stained glass factory. They even joined the Marshall County Chamber of Commerce. But some contention remains, and it goes to the very presence of the Hare Krishnas at Limestone. New Vrindavan is presently comprised of some 2,000 acres scattered through more than 20 different parcels of land, both leased and owned outright. Visitors and newcomers can't always tell where the property lines are. But it's the manner in which New Vrindavan has grown that disturbs some of its neighbors and has led to informal agreements among a few of them not to sell land to the Hare Krishnas.
They offer people such high prices for their land, that a third, half more than what they're worth and everything, that some people just can't refuse it. They just need the money and they take it, and they move.
That last assertion is supported by the property records in the Marshall County Courthouse. In a few instances, the landowners might not even have known who they were selling to.
Well, it's certainly unfortunate that we would have to pay a middleman to buy property, but why not turn the question around? Why is it people, when they're in the market to sell land, would not sell it to us? It seems like that's discrimination.
This limestone resident, who wanted to be anonymous, expressed a chain of complaints which, justified or not, do form part of the attitude here about New Vrindavan.
They just do things that you can't prove that they have done, but you just have that feeling that your cows don't get out by themselves for no unknown reason.
Anything that goes wrong, some people will say, well, the Krishnas did it.
Folks around here have had to learn a lot about the Hare Krishnas, but at the same time, and often starting with a similar unfamiliarity, the Hare Krishnas have had to adjust to life in West Virginia. The Swami dreams of developing the religious community into an incorporated municipality, so he's concerned with citizenship as well as spiritual life. But he knows that not all of those attracted to this belief and lifestyle always measure up.
Religious life is like that. In one way, it is difficult. It is difficult to control your senses. It is difficult to give up meat eating, illicit sex, intoxication, gambling. How many people can do that?
And so not everyone who's come to New Vrindavan has made it.
No, that's correct. Of course, people do look to us that every Krishna should set a perfect example, and we certainly should hope that they do.
But you don't always.
But, well, I try to. But I can't expect that every person who comes to this community is going to be perfect, nor should anyone. I mean, after all, we've come to this material world because we're imperfect. It's just like if you go to the hospital and you expect everybody to be well. This world is a sick place. This is the place of the fallen or the conditioned souls, and it is a place for reformation.